They fed her the last piece of bread, kissed her forehead, and rode away like it meant nothing. No goodbye, no glance back, just the sound of a wagon fading into the trees while a 10-year-old girl stood barefoot on the trail with crumbs in her hand and silence where her name used to live. She didn't chase them. She already knew what chasing got you, tired, bruised, and still alone. She sat where they left her, knees pulled to her chest, eyes dry but burning. She had been the extra one, not theirs by blood, not theirs by choice, just one more mouth in a family that had too little and cared even less. Now she was a bundle on the dirt, left like a forgotten sack of grain. No one asked if she could survive. No one checked if she even wanted to. She counted ants to pass the time, gave them names, watched the sun crawl across the sky, and wondered if it ever felt abandoned too. She didn't expect rescue or kindness, but sometime near what felt like the end of the day, she heard the sound of leather and hooves, measured, deliberate, not rushed. A man came into view riding a dark, sleek horse. He wasn't dusty or hungry. He looked like the kind of man people waited for, but he stopped for someone no one had. He stared at her like he was sizing up a deal. "You lost?" he asked. "No," she said. "Left." "You got anyone coming back for you?" "No." "You got a name?" "Kaylee." The man didn't smile, but something in his face changed. He reached into his saddlebag and handed her a wrapped biscuit and a small tin of water. She stared at him. "Why are you helping me?" "Because somebody should have helped me once," he said. He didn't ask her to follow. He just waited. And when she stood up, slow, unsure, still holding the biscuit, he turned his horse and nodded. "Let's go, Callie." She didn't ask where. She just followed the first person who ever stopped. Not because she was useful, but because she shouldn't have been left. The ride was long and quiet, broken only by the sound of the horse's hooves and the way Callie's arms tightened every time they passed a shadow in the trees. She didn't speak much. She didn't ask questions. The man didn't offer explanations, but he never once looked annoyed by her silence. That was new. When they crested the last ridge, she saw it. A house bigger than any she'd ever known. Not a shack, not a bunkhouse, a real home, white fence, barn out back, 2 porches, and no one else in sight. "You live here?" she asked, her voice low. "Yes, alone." "Yes." He dismounted first, then reached up and lifted her down carefully, like he wasn't sure if she trusted the ground. She didn't. Not yet. He opened the front door without knocking. She hesitated on the threshold, waiting to be told where to sit or what not to touch. But no orders came. "Pick a room," he said simply. "They're all empty." She wandered the hallway like someone sneaking into a church. Every room had furniture, curtains, rugs that didn't feel like they'd been borrowed or patched, a kitchen with glass jars lined up in rows, a fireplace already cleaned. Upstairs, she found a bed with a quilt folded at the end and a window that faced the sunset. She sat on the edge, still holding the biscuit he'd given her hours ago. The man appeared in the doorway, a stack of folded clothes in his arms. "They're big, but clean." She nodded. "You got a last name?" he asked. "Used to want mine." She blinked. "Can I?" "It's not for sale," he said, "but it's yours if you want to wear it." "What is it?" "Dalton. I'm Cyrus Dalton." The name sat heavy in her chest, not like a chain, but like armor. He left the clothes and walked away. No promises, no conditions, just space. That night, she didn't cry. She pulled on the too big shirt, curled beneath the quilt, and listened for sounds of yelling stomping, drunken threats, but none came. Just the soft click of a lantern going out. For the first time in her life, the dark didn't feel like punishment. It felt like rest. The next morning, Callie woke up in a bed that hadn't creaked under her weight or collapsed in the night. For a moment, she lay still, unsure if it was a dream or a trick someone was playing, but the smell of frying meat drifted upstairs, and when she patted down barefoot, there he was, Cyrus Dalton, cooking alone. He didn't look up when she entered the kitchen. "You eat eggs?" he asked. She nodded. "You allergic to anything?" She shook her head. He slid a plate toward the second chair. "Then sit. No questions. Not where she came from. Not what happened. Not why a child her age already flinched when someone raised a voice too quick or moved too fast. He didn't ask. And that was the kindest thing he could have done." They ate in silence. When she finished, he poured her a tin cup of milk and finally looked at her. Really looked. "I'm heading out to check the north fence. You can stay here or ride with me. I won't leave you alone unless you say it's all right." She blinked. People didn't ask her what she wanted. They told her what was next. "I'll ride," she said. He nodded once and rose from the table. Out by the barn she met his horse again. Cold black, eyes sharp, and beside it a smaller ran with calm eyes and steady legs. "She's yours if you stay," he said. "Name her whatever you like." She didn't move. "Why are you doing this?" He adjusted the saddle and replied without turning, "Because when I was 10, nobody did." Callie climbed up on the horse with awkward legs and a fast heart. She didn't know how to ride well, but Cyrus never rushed her, just guided slowly, letting the silence settle into something comfortable. At the fence line, he showed her how to test a post, how to spot rust on the wire, how to patch a break without cutting your hands. He didn't treat her like a lost girl. He treated her like someone who might have a future worth teaching. On the way back, the sun warmed her shoulders, and for once, she didn't feel small. She felt counted, not because someone said she mattered, but because someone didn't need her story to believe she did. A storm came through 2 nights later, fast and cold with rain that slammed the windows and turned the fields into rivers. Callie stayed quiet as thunder rolled over the hills, curled up in the chair near the fire with her knees pulled tight under one of Cyrus's flannel shirts. He didn't ask if she was scared. He just handed her a dry biscuit and sat across from her with a book he didn't read. For a long time, the only sound between them was the crackle of the flames. Then he stood, walked to the hallway closet, and pulled out a heavy coat wrapped in paper and twine. "This was my sister's," he said, setting it on the table. "She died last winter." Callie's eyes darted to his face. He didn't look like a man telling a story, just a man stating a fact. "She'd want it used," he added, not stored. Callie didn't move. She stared at the coat, the way the sleeves had been mended with someone's careful hand. It was too big, but it looked warm. Warmer than anything she'd ever owned. "You don't have to take it," he said, "but it's here if you need it." She said nothing, but when the next boom of thunder cracked the sky, she reached for it slowly, like she thought it might vanish. The coat smelled like cedar and faintly of smoke, and she pulled it over her shoulders without looking up. "Thank you," she whispered. Cyrus only nodded. The fire burned low as the storm raged on, and Callie leaned into the fabric, wrapped in a kindness no one had ever offered without strings. The next morning, the sun returned, and the mud baked fast under its weight. Cyrus was already outside by the time she woke, feeding the animals. She walked out wearing the coat. He said nothing, but she saw the flicker of something soft behind his eyes when he looked at her. Respect, maybe, or relief. That afternoon, she helped him mend a busted trough, and when a nail pricked her thumb, she winced but didn't cry. "You all right?" he asked. "I'm fine." And she was. Not because it didn't hurt, but because someone finally gave her space to hurt without being punished for it. Cyrus didn't take Callie into town until the end of the 3rd week. She'd been sleeping better, eating like someone who expected the next meal to come, speaking a little more each day. He hitched the wagon before dawn and told her, "We'll be back before dark. Don't worry." She didn't answer, but she went back inside and changed into the cleanest clothes he'd set aside for her. The ones he didn't say were new, but she could tell. He didn't mention the bow he tied in her hair either, just helped her climb up and handed her the reins. The ride was long, and the moment they reached the dusty stretch of Main Street, Callie felt it. Eyes watching from windows, from porches, from behind newspaper stands and broom handles. She wasn't used to being looked at like she was a question. She was used to being ignored. But here they stared like they wanted answers. Cyrus didn't explain who she was. He didn't announce anything. At the mercantile, he handed her a small basket and said, "Get what you want within reason." She held it like it might bite. "You mean for me? Unless you think I wear blue ribbon soap and pickle candy?" She blinked, then snorted an accidental laugh. It surprised them both. Inside, the shopkeeper raised an eyebrow, but said nothing when Cyrus nodded at him. At the counter, he added fabric, needles, a brush, and a book about wild ponies to the pile. "For her?" he said once. The shopkeeper nodded, wordless approval. Back outside they passed 2 women whispering near the livery. One of them raised her chin. "Yours?" she asked. Callie stiffened, but Cyrus only looked the woman in the eye. "She is now?" The woman blinked, turned back to her companion, and said nothing else. On the ride home, Callie held the book in her lap and stared at the ribbon tied around the bag of sweets. She didn't speak until they were nearly halfway back. "You didn't have to say that," she murmured. "Say what?" "That I'm yours." Cyrus flicked the reins lightly, watching the road. "Didn't say it for them," he replied. "Said it for you." And somewhere deep in her chest, a wall that had never truly broken finally did. Quietly, all at once, without needing to be rebuilt. That night, Cyrus went to the old roll-top desk in the den and pulled out a stack of yellowed papers tied in string. Callie watched from the doorway, unsure if she should ask, but the man who never demanded answers was finally holding one of his own. "I didn't want to show you this too soon," he said, his voice low, "but you've been here long enough. I think you deserve to know where you stand." He unfolded a letter, written in a neat, unfamiliar hand. "This is my sister's will," he said. "She owned half this ranch, and in it she wrote that if I ever found someone with the same spirit she had, they were welcome to her share." Callie blinked. "But I'm not blood, I know." He tapped the paper. "Doesn't say anything about blood, just about heart." He handed her the page, and for a long second she didn't reach for it. When she finally did, her fingers shook. It wasn't about land or money or names. It was that someone she'd never met believed in the kind of love that could be given, not just inherited. Cyrus continued, legally, it still goes through me, but I've drawn up something else. He pulled out a smaller envelope with her name in block letters. This makes you guardian of the eastern pasture. It's not everything, but it's yours. Callie held it like it weighed more than a lifetime. Why are you doing this? She whispered. Cyrus leaned back in the chair, arms folded. Because someday when I'm gone, I don't want the land to go to someone who just sees dirt. I want it in the hands of someone who remembers what it meant to be unwanted and chose differently. Callie couldn't speak. The fire popped in the corner, the only sound filling the silence her heart couldn't. She didn't cry. She didn't have to. Cyrus stood and placed a hand lightly on her shoulder. You've got time, he said, to decide what kind of person you want to be. But for now, this is your place too. For the first time, Callie wasn't afraid of the future because someone had already given her a piece of it and trusted her not to break it. Spring came too early that year, bringing with it more than just wildflowers and runoff. One afternoon, as Cyrus was out mending fence posts and Callie was brushing the old mare by the barn, a rider appeared on the horizon, dusty, sun-worn, and wearing the kind of hat that meant business, not charm. He dismounted slow like he knew he was being watched. Callie stepped back instinctively, her hand tightening on the brush. Looking for Cyrus Mallister, the man said. His voice was dry, like gravel over rusted metal. She didn't answer, just pointed toward the far field. By the time Cyrus returned, the man was leaning against the post rail like he'd already claimed it. Name's Clay Barriner, he said. I reckon you remember my father. Cyrus didn't blink too well. He died. Left me this. He pulled out a deed, one that named the eastern pasture as part of the Barringer family's original holdings. I've come to collect. Callie felt her throat close. Cyrus took the paper, read it once, then twice. You're 20 years too late, he said. That claim expired only if it was contested. It wasn't. Clay stepped closer. And I heard you've got some stray orphan girl sleeping in that pasture house like she owns it. Callie froze. The weight of everything, the coat, the name, the guardianship, suddenly felt like ash. But Cyrus didn't flinch. He folded the paper carefully and handed it back. You're welcome to try and take it through the courts, but that pasture belongs to someone now, someone who earned it. She's just a kid, Clay spat with no name, no blood. She's got more backbone than any man I've seen come out of your line. The silence after was sharp as a blade. Clay stepped back, fuming, but said nothing more, just mounted his horse and turned down the trail, the wind at his back. That night, Callie sat on the porch, knees pulled up to her chest. He's right, isn't he? She asked. I don't really have a claim. Cyrus stared out at the horizon. You do now, but the law only knows paper. I know people, and I know you. She didn't smile, didn't thank him. She just stayed close, wrapped in her coat, as if staying meant believing. And in that moment, it did. The next time Clay Barriner came, he didn't come alone. 2 other men rode with him. Brothers or hired fists, Callie couldn't tell. Cyrus wasn't home. He'd gone to town for supplies, trusting the trail and the silence to keep things peaceful. But the rumble of hooves said otherwise. Callie saw them coming from the barn loft. She didn't panic. Not anymore. She climbed down, tied her braid tight, and stepped onto the porch before they even dismounted. Clay was the first to speak. Thought I'd come talk to the girl wearing a man's title like it fits. She didn't answer. You got something that belongs to my family? He nodded towards the pasture behind her. Thought I'd offer you a deal. Walk away now and I won't make trouble. Callie looked at the land, the barn, the slope where the chickens roamed free, where Cyrus had once handed her a broken rake and said, "Start here." She thought about the book in her drawer, the soap that smelled like lavender, the porch chair that creaked just right. Then she looked back at Clay. "It's already mine." The two men behind him shifted in their saddles. Clay chuckled. "You really think you can hold it?" "I don't think," she said. "I know." She reached behind the door and lifted the shotgun Cyrus had left, leaned there, not aimed, just held steady. "Now you can leave, or we can wait for someone who will tell you the same thing with bigger words and legal stamps." Clay's face hardened, but something in her eyes stopped him. Not rage, not fear, just clarity. "You're bluffing," he muttered. "Maybe," she said, "but are you ready to find out?" A long pause, then slowly Clay backed toward his horse. "This isn't over. It is for you." He swung into the saddle. His men followed. No shots fired, no curses, just the sound of boots brushing stirrups and a trail fading behind them. When Cyrus returned that evening, she was still on the porch. He looked at her then, at the empty road. "Something happened." She nodded. "They came. I handled it." Cyrus didn't ask more, just sat beside her and said, "Told you it was yours." Callie didn't reply. She just let the quiet settle. The kind of quiet that belonged to someone who had finally defended her place in the world. The news of what Callie had done reached town before Cyrus did. By the time he rode in for the next supply run, 3 storekeepers had already asked if the little girl out at Mallister Ranch was taking over operations. Cyrus only smiled and bought extra fence wire. Back home, Callie didn't walk like a shadow anymore. She rode the pasture in the mornings, checked the water troughs, mended gaps in the coop wire, not because someone told her to, but because she knew how, and because the land didn't ask for permission, only effort. One afternoon, while pruning a dead branch near the garden fence, she spotted a figure near the oak trees, small, quiet, dirty. A boy, maybe 7, no shoes, no bag. She called out. He didn't run, just stared. She walked to him slow, offered a crust of bread from her apron. "Where's your family?" she asked. He shook his head, then pointed to the trail, miles long, empty. She didn't ask more, just said, "You hungry?" He nodded. That night, she gave him a blanket, placed an extra plate on the table, and set a stool by the fire. Cyrus raised an eyebrow, but didn't question it. "Another orphan," he said lightly. "You collecting us now?" Callie met his eyes. "Someone collected me once?" Cyrus nodded once, satisfied. In the days that followed, the boy, his name was Micah, spoke little, but stayed close. He watched Callie feed the chickens, watched Cyrus fit a new beam under the porch, and began mimicking them both without asking. On the 4th night, he spoke, just one sentence. "Can I stay?" Callie looked to Cyrus. He didn't blink. "Not my decision," he said. Callie knelt beside Micah. "You help. You listen. You treat what's here like it matters. That's how it works." The boy nodded solemnly. "Then yeah," she said softly. "You can stay." That evening she sat on the porch with a mug of cider, watching the boy chase chickens. Cyrus joined her. "Feels different, doesn't it?" She smiled faintly. Yeah, like I know where the door is now, and I'm the one who decides when it opens. She didn't need a last name or a signed paper, not any more, because being chosen was only half the journey. Choosing someone back, that was what made it home. Autumn returned like a second chance. Crisp air, golden skies, and enough peace to make you believe the trail could never hurt again. The pasture was full and thick with feed, the barn stacked high with hay, and the little house that once held only silence now echoed with laughter, and chores shouted across the yard. Callie had taken to waking before the sun, not because she had to, but because she wanted to be the first to light the stove, to feel the day begin in her hands. Micah snored on the cot in the corner, now with Boots beside it, and a carved wooden horse she'd whittled for him. That morning Cyrus called her to the porch, in his hand a folded paper. "It's time," he said. She didn't need to ask what he meant. It wasn't about land or deeds or names. It was about giving her what she'd already earned. "You're adopting me?" she asked, her voice quiet. He nodded. "If you'll have me." Callie looked down at the hands that once trembled when asked her name, now stained with dirt, ink, and care. "I thought I already did," she whispered. They went into town together. The clerk raised an eyebrow. He'd never seen Cyrus sign anything with such calm. When he read the new name aloud, Callie Mallister, she flinched, then smiled. Not because it made her someone new, but because it finally told the truth. By winter, the ranch had 3 names on the gate: Cyrus, Callie, and Micah, etched into a plank above the fence in crooked paint, the kind done by small hands. And when people came by, neighbors, ranch hands, even the school teacher, they didn't ask, "Where'd she come from?" They asked, "How'd you teach her to ride like that?" Or, "Can I buy some of your hen's eggs?" Callie never needed to explain. The trail no longer defined her. Being left didn't define her. What did was what she'd built, what she'd chosen, and who had chosen her back. Please like, share, and subscribe to support more stories like this on Echoes of the West. If you had found Callie on that trail, would you have stopped or walked on like everyone else? Let us know in the comments.